ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। Namaskar to all of you. Welcome to the study of the great master Sri Ramakrishna. Last session we had finished the life of Mathuranath. So now we are proceeding directly to the spiritual aspirants' life of Ramakrishna. So whenever any chance comes, then we will be also studying some other lives, maybe just like Bhairavi Brahmani, maybe just like Hridayaram, or whatever it might be. Whenever we get the especially some lives coming in between there, touching the life of Sri Ramakrishna, then we will take up that life and then study, go into the detail. Now we are directly going into the spiritual aspirants' life of Sri Ramakrishna, especially to the Vatsalya Bhava, the attitude of a mother or a father looking God as his child, a boy child or girl child, whatever. That is Vatsalya Bhava, showing parental love. So now we were preparing for that. Shardanandaji Maharaj was taking us through different aspects of that Madhura Bhava, and also Ramakrishna's mind. We were studying the special mind of Sri Ramakrishna. So now we shall go to the Vatsalya Bhava of Sri Ramakrishna, which now took a form after the company. Now that's why they tell the Satsanga, the company of great souls will also bring us equal and godly divine thoughts in us too. Whomsoever we may be in their company, if they are great souls, in our mind too, without any effort, effortlessly, our mind rises to a higher level. So that is the speciality of Satsanga, company of holy men. So Ramakrishna didn't need it, but now, for our sake, now that Vatsalya Bhava mood has coming into the company of that another great soul, Jatadhari, the Ramayana Sadhu. These great souls, although one with normal humanity, distinguished themselves from others by their absolute dependence on the universal will. So, absolute dependence on the universal will. When they have this ego, when they depend upon ego, so we will not be absolutely dependent upon the God's will, divine will. Oh, I have so much of property there. So whenever difficulty comes, my mind rush towards that. I have a property, I have an estate there, I have somebody, known person there, I have these people as my relatives, they can help me, they will be to my help when I'm in crisis. So all such thoughts will come. When nobody comes to our help, when we are in complete despair, then we start thinking it as a last resort, we start praying to the Lord. There's no mistake in that. But the great souls, although they are one with normal humanity, they are distinguished from others, common people like us, by their absolute dependence on the universal will. So they completely surrender to God, and they have obliterated their own ego and selfishness to such an extent that for everything and each and everything, they completely depend upon the Lord and Lord alone, the divine will. There'll be no pursuit of self interest at all. So, unlike ordinary men, they are often seen to cooperate with circumstances and activities that cause their own destruction. In spite of their awareness of the ruinous consequences of such cooperation in advance, not only do they show no aversion to them, but extend a joyous welcome. The reader will understand that we mean what we mean if we give a few examples. Conscious of the inevitability of Sita's banishment, Rama sent her away to the forest. We studied these things in the last class. So many other things of Buddha and other things. So I came back to that to show you that they are absolutely dependent on God's will. They don't have their own will. So how Avatar Ramachandra had identified himself with his own, that divine will, not his own. In the divine will, he didn't have his own. So now, even when he knew that Sita Ma was not at mistake, even then he had to oblige to the divine will, even knowing the consequences. Rama sent her away to the forest, though he knew that she was innocent, though he knew that the forsaking of Lakshmana, his own dear brother, who was dearer than his life, would inevitably bring his life as a human being to an end. He carried it out. When he knew that when he banished Lakshmana, that was the end. He has to give up his own Leela. He was not at all unhappy or anything with that. He was never unhappy, even when he was about to give his own kingdom as a young person. He had to go to the forest just to keep the words of his father. He never felt unhappy, not even an iota of sorrow or anger against his father or his foster mother, Kaikeyi, or anybody. That was the extent of his identity with the divine will. So now we meet on investigation with many such events in the lives of persons perfected and liberated in life, not to speak of the incarnations of God. Even this can be seen in ordinary people who have attained to that higher realms of spiritual life. Even in them too, we can see such occasions or complete obliteration of their own individuality and identifying themselves with the divine will. So if we try to find a rational reconciliation between such unusual expressions of personal effort, so often seen in the lives of great men, with the theory of their absolute dependence on the universal will, we are inevitably led to the conclusion that their personal efforts are but the manifestations of the same all-pervading will. Therefore, it is clear that all the selfish impressions in the minds of these persons who depend absolutely on God's will are destroyed once for all. Their minds ascend to a holy plane of consciousness where pure desires alone, absolutely untarnished by selfishness, arise in them. So I had told earlier, there is one siddhi which is told in Raj Yoga. If you start practicing telling the truth, kaya, vacha, manasa. Kaya means at the body level, vacha means at the speech level, manasa means at the thought level. So we may be telling truth at the talk level. We think that just at the words, truthfulness, we all know that. But there is truthfulness at the thought level too. What do I feel in my mind? Am I trying to manipulate things? Am I trying to show off something and thinking something? So we are taught in the company, suppose you go to some marketing company, you go to some other company, you have to go there to the outer world to sell your things of that company. So the person who comes there at the top will come and teach us, even though you are not happy with that guy. A person comes there, you meet him. So though you don't like him, you are averse to him, but even then you have to give a smiling face. Inside you may be feeling very bad thoughts about him. So I have to give a smile, artificial smile, and tell him, glad to meet you, sir. Though you may be feeling very, very bad to meet him. So even then, in spite of that, you have to tell. Why? Because to make more money, money is more important. Selfishness is important. So at the thought level, you may be feeling bad. But at the action level, bodily level, you have to show up that you are very happy, very glad to meet you, sir. You should give an artificial smile, show all your 32 teeth, tooths. So these are all, our mind is tainted by our selfish ends. So I may tell something, I may think something. So even at the thought level, you should be aware what is happening at the thought level. What are your thoughts? So that you are spiritually you are growing. You are even controlling your thoughts. But then comes the after the thought only produces the words. Then the thought becomes too deep, then the actions, it will come in the form of actions. So that's why at all these three planes, you are one. You are the same. So then if you are truthful at these three levels in truthfulness, for 12 years, if you practice that, whatever you tell will become truth. Or the siddhi is whatever that is truth will only be. So there you can see that the divine will has taken hold of you. Whatever happens in future, the truthful, the things which are going to happen only will be told by you. There was one great saint of divine. The story is told in Tamil Nadu, in South India. So he was a very great devotee of Divine Mother, and while he was a great scholar. While he was uttering something to the king, by mistake he told it was Amavasya. But it was approaching full moon. Now, all the other pandits who were angry against him, who were jealous against him, told it to the king, and king was about to punish him. You have to prove that. It is contrary, you are told something. Then he prayed to Divine Mother. And when he prayed to Divine Mother and the opportune time came, if he doesn't prove that, he had to fall into the fire and be killed. And suddenly, Mother made it by her will, because she's the one who controls everything. So she made, even though it was not Amavasya, she made it. So Divine Mother can do that if you have surrendered everything at the will of the Mother or at God, whatever you like. They are the same thing, whether it is Divine Mother, whether it is Narayana, whether it is Shiva, whether it is Ganapati, the Lord is the same. So if you have surrendered completely and you are ananyas chintayanto mam, always constantly thinking of the Lord, depending upon the Lord, then the Lord can transform anything. But your intensity of dependence of the Lord should be there. This half-hearted thing cannot do. So that's what here Sharadanandaji Maharaj is explaining. Therefore, it is clear that all the selfish impressions in the minds of even ordinary sadhakas, ordinary spiritual aspirants, ordinary saints, let alone avatar purushas and Ishvara kotis, it is clear that all the selfish impressions in the minds of these persons who depend absolutely on God's will are destroyed once for all. Their minds ascend to a holy plane of consciousness where pure desires alone, absolutely untarnished by selfishness, arise in them so freely, reposing their faith in the desire of their minds and acting under their impulse. These sadhakas in that state do not incur any blame. Such actions of master, it goes without saying, should not be imitated by ordinary people, because we have not made our mind as pure, or we have completely surrendered our will with the divine will. So after that, then automatically you will also be behaving like that. But first we have to prepare ourselves. So just we should not imitate people literally. at the external sense, just behaving like that. But you can imitate internally. So internally, imitating them will not be problematic. Do not do that externally, literally. So first purify your mind. Then you want to attain their state, then go on imitating them internally, changing your thoughts, changing your behavior internally, then automatically externally too, these things will come. So that's why Sharadanandaji is warning, because Ramakrishna's mind was so pure, his thought was completely identified with that of the divine. So whatever desire, only good desires will rise, and his desires will be that of the will of the Lord. That's why there'll be no problem. But at our thought, whatever desire we have, whatever we feel and we act, will create karma phala, fruits of action, karma phala. So that's why we should, because we have ego, the sense of agency, I am doing that. We are not akarta, just like when we identify ourselves. Yesterday we were studying that Bhagavad Gita verse where the Atman is akarta, the Atman, that the Lord is abhokta. It doesn't enjoy the fruits of action. At the same time, it doesn't have even the sense of agency that I am doing. That ego is not there. So where is the question of the karma phala going to that person who has identified himself with Atman? It cannot, karmas cannot touch the Atman. So whatever work you do, identifying yourself with Atman, raising your mind to that level, then whatever you do, whatever you think, it will not tarnish you. The karma phala will not touch you. So that verse which we studied yesterday was 21st verse of the second chapter. Veda avinashinam nityam ya ena majam avyayam katham sapurusha partha kam ghatayati antikam. O Partha, there's Arjuna, how can one who knows the soul to be imperishable, that is one with identified himself with that Atman or God, God consciousness, eternal, unborn and immutable, kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? So Arjuna is being guided by Krishna, telling that you raise your level to the higher consciousness, make your mind one with the divine consciousness. Then whatever you do, you are a warrior, you work as a warrior as a duty, then no sins will touch you. A spiritually elevated soul quells the ego that makes us feel that we are the doers of our actions. In that state, one can see that the soul seated within actually does nothing. Such an elevated soul, though doing all kinds of action, is never tainted by those actions. Karma phala, either punya or papa, will not accrue to him. Shri Krishna is advising Arjuna that he must elevate himself to that enlightened level, seeing himself as the non-doer, free from egotism, and perform his duty rather than shirk from it. Do all your duties, will not touch you. So it will not be tainted. These are the words of Shri Krishna. The same thing, what we studied yesterday in Bhagavad Gita. So we can connect that today to whatever happening here in the Leela Prasanga, the great master. So we can see Sharadanandaji Maharaj is telling such actions of the master it goes without saying should not be imitated by ordinary people, because we have not reached that level. First, we have to identify with that Atman, realize that Atman, our real nature. Then whatever you do will not taint you. Therefore, it is clear that all the selfish impressions in the minds of these people, the saints who have realized God, who depend absolutely on God's will, are destroyed once for all. Their minds ascend to a holy plane of consciousness where pure desires alone, absolutely untarnished by selfishness, arise in them. So only for the welfare of the world, only the divine will come up. It is only for the good of the humanity. So even if Arjuna now, as Lord Krishna has told, to raise his level to the level of Atman, then do all the working. He was a warrior. He has to kill Bhishma, Drona, and other people. Then the sins will not touch you. So that is, he's telling how to work unattached. Krishna is telling the secret of Karma Yoga. So we can apply that secret of Karma Yoga, how you can work unattached. Then no karma, papa or punya will touch you. You'll be a free soul. So how you can be in the world, do all your duties, do everything. So even if he kills Drona, even if he kills Bhishma and other warriors as a duty to protect the righteousness, to protect the people of his country as a warrior, sacrificing his own life, then with that attitude of identifying himself with higher consciousness, then nothing, no sin will taint him, touch him. That's what we can see in both the cases. Sri Krishna is telling the same thing. And now here, taking the life of Sri Ramakrishna, Shardanandaji is explaining the same thing. So their minds ascend to a holy plane of consciousness where pure desires alone, absolutely untarnished by selfishness, arise in them. So freely reposing their faiths in the desire of their minds and acting under their impulse, these sadhakas in that state do not incur any blame. Such actions of the master, it goes without saying, should not be imitated by ordinary people, but the sadhakas in the unique state mentioned above will no doubt be enlightened by them in guiding their lives. So when you go forward in spiritual life, then the Antaryamin, the Lord who is sitting in your own heart, will now start acting as your guru. So your inner conscience itself, when you go on purifying by doing more and more japa, karma yoga, by doing the service of the Lord, by helping people, by doing dhyana, meditation, by doing chantings of Vishnu Sahasranama, Lalita Sahasranama, all those things will purify your mind as you go forward in spiritual life. Then your own mind will start acting like the Guru. It will guide you. Then it will not allow you to make any, keep a wrong step. So that is what you can see it here. Even in ordinary people, it happens. So the scriptures have compared their desires for eating, drinking, etc., the great saints who have realized, and avatar purushas, which are necessary for the preservation of life, just like fried seeds, just as the roasted seeds of trees, creepers, etc., lose their vital power and cannot germinate. So the worldly desires of these people, persons, roasted over the fire of self control and divine knowledge, gnana, can no more draw them towards enjoyment and lead them astray. The master also has commented on this point, thus coming in contact with the philosopher's stone, Sparshamani, a steel sword becoming a golden sword. It retains unchanged its formidable form, but it can inflict no injury. It cannot kill. It cannot put you into problem. The seers of the Upanishads say that all the mental processes of sadhakas in that state correspond to facts. In other words, all the ideas arising naturally in their minds always prove to be objectively true and never otherwise. We could never have believed the above mentioned words of the seers if we had not repeatedly tested the ideas of the master established in Bhava Mukha and found them to be true. So we have seen in the life of Sri Ramakrishna, when he used to get some doubts, other people used to create some doubt, just like this Haladari. They tell something and it creates doubt because he was a scholar. Then he used to run to mother. Mother, he has told like this, you are Tamasi, it seems. Then mother used to show him the vision. No, I am all the three. I am the divine mother, I am all the three. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, Trigunatmika. Sarvamangala Mangalye, Shive, Sarvartha Thadike, Sharanye, Trambake, Gauri, Narayani, Namostute. So in that you tell Gunamaye, Gunashraye. So she is all the three, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. She not only, she is of all that Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, she is also the one who is given the shelter to them. Is above, not only above them, much above these three gunas. She is the one who is giving the shelter to all those things. Gunashraya, Ashraya, Gunamaye, both. So in that shloka, Saramangala Mangali, you can see that. So the same thing here, you can see. So Bhava Mukha, Divine Mother told Ramakrishna at that time to be in Bhavamukha, then you will not be in the doubt, state of doubt. 3 times it happened. Once, another time, a man with a beard and shining face, just the face came up from that smoke and told, be in Bhavamukha. So, what is that Bhavamukha? To stay on the threshold. What is the threshold here? Suppose you keep a lamp on the wall, on the threshold. Both the rooms, this side and that side, can be enlightened. So that is keeping the lamp on the threshold. So likewise, here to stay in Bhavamukha, Ramakrishna was ordained by the divine will. That means not to completely stay in this worldly plane, in this conscious state. So there is another state, the divine state, Turiyavastha, godly state. So you stay in between that, on the threshold, where there is a compartment. You feel that there is a watertight compartment between that divinity, pure consciousness, Turiyavastha, and this whatever we are in now, the awakened state. So you stay in between that threshold. Then you can see both. Whenever you want, you can come to this. Whenever you want, you can be touching there, going to the other state. So when you are in Bhavamukha, then there will be no confusion. You will be in the divine state as well as you are in touch with the worldly state. You can do the work because you have to do the work of this world, helping people. So you have to be in touch with both. So do not completely merge there into the divine level, nor you can be completely here. You be in between in that Bhavamukha. Then you can get the thoughts from the divine level and give it to the ordinary plane and help the people to rise up in spiritual plane. So Bhavamukha. We could never believe the above mentioned words of the seers if we had not repeatedly tested the ideas of the master established in Bhavamukha and found them to be true. If he felt hesitation about taking any food, it was found on inquiry to have been polluted before. Suppose somebody gave him some food and Ramakrishna wanted to eat it. He will take that food or fruit to be eaten like this, then somehow some force will not allow him to eat it. It would go back. Again, not to displease the devotee, he would take up that person who has come, he would take up the food to be eaten, again it will go back. Then after inquiry, if they found that either that money earned by that person to bring this fruit or something was wrongly earned. Suppose some people who were in the medical profession who had come and they had bought these fruits, he would see the pus, blood, and other things there. Why? Because they had earned that money by the pain of those diseased people. So is it wrong then in the medical profession? No. Treating the patient and earning your livelihood is not wrong. But fleecing them, forcing them. Nowadays you see the medical profession that they give wrong medication to please the pharmaceutical company, more costly things. And even though the operation and other things are not necessary, they will force upon so many things on the patients and they will earn money. They will have some understanding between the labs and other things. We have seen that. So when they are with the intention of earning more money for their luxury, selfishness, then they fleece the patient. Then Ramakrishna couldn't touch that money. He could, when he used to take that fruit, whatever the earned by the wrong means, used to take that fruit to eat, then he used to see blood, pus, and other things in that. Then he could know it was earned wrongly. Why? Those people were from the medical profession, they earned it wrongly by the pain of the patients. They have earned more money, fleecing them to get their own selfishness and luxury. But if you do that, the same medical profession as a service, that will lead you to liberation with a good attitude of service. But for the sake of luxury, then it will bring you sin. So many times when Ramakrishna was offered so many things, he couldn't touch it because he could know The moment he saw the food, he could know that it was not earned wrongly. Nobody has told him, but the divine will was acting through him, so it would not allow him to do that. It would force him, he couldn't take it. So we can see that example here, Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling. So we as devotees of Sri Ramakrishna should be very careful how we earn money. We should never go for the wrong means. We should be always perfectly earning with our hard-earned money. If you give that to Ramakrishna, then only the Lord accepts it. So he's shown it. So if he felt hesitation about taking any food, it was found. Then Narendra or Sharadanandaji would make investigation. Why did Sri Ramakrishna not take the food of that particular person? They used to go and investigate. What is the background? So it was found on inquiry to have been polluted before. Another time, Yogananda was bringing some lemon to Sri Ramakrishna because it would be very good for his health. So he had taken permission from the owner of a estate or a garden, lemon garden, and he used to bring one or two once in a week or something to give it to Sri Ramakrishna or daily. So one day after he bought it, Sri Ramakrishna couldn't take that lemon, use that lemon. Then whatever, no, I have bought with the permission of that owner of the lemon garden. Even then Ramakrishna couldn't take it. Then they went and started investigation. Why could Ramakrishna not take it? Because I have, in the right way, I have bought it. I have taken the permission of the thing, and when he donated that 2 lemons, I bought it. So why couldn't Sri Ramakrishna take it? No. When they investigated, he had owned that lemon garden on lease. So on that day, the lease, he was not the owner of the lemon garden. He had taken the ownership of the lemon garden on lease. So that day, the lease transpired. It ended. And after that, he is no more the owner. The original owner is another person. So now, when he bought that lemon from that garden, it amounted to stealing because the owner has changed. His, whatever that owner, earlier owner who had given the permission, his lease had transpired. After that, he is no more the owner. So that was another owner, the original owner. So this Yoganandaji had bought the lemon unknowingly, who the owner was or the lease ended. But here, Ramakrishna never knew anything about it. But he was established in the divine will in Bhavamukha. Now, he couldn't touch that lemon because it was bought from the act of stealing. So that was the extent of Sri Ramakrishna's mind, which was completely dependent upon the divine will. And the divine will, divinity or the Lord would not allow Sri Ramakrishna to take even the slightest wrong step. So if he felt his power of speech failing him suddenly when he was about to give an advice on spiritual matters to somebody, Sharadanandaji Maharaj is telling, if he felt his power of speech failing him suddenly when he was about to give an advice on spiritual matters to anybody, it was proved that that person was in truth completely unfit for receiving that teaching. So somebody would press his throat. He would feel as if somebody is pressing his throat not to tell that thing, advice to that person, because he's not fit. So that was the extent of complete resilience or surrender. So we have to now, many times we proclaim, oh, I have completely surrendered to the will of the Lord, and we'll be doing contrary things. And we tell many people I have seen, oh, I have made Lord as the beacon, as a pole star of my life. I have completely surrendered. But in their actions, nothing will be there. So when such thing happens, when Sri Ramakrishna wanted to give all that he has earned, learned, was eager. But when the person who is there sitting, receiving the teaching was unfit, then immediately he would feel he can't tell. He can't utter that teaching. So Sharadanandaji Maharaj just tested it. If he felt His power of speech, Ramakrishna's power of speech, failing him suddenly when he was about to give an advice on spiritual matters to anybody. On investigation, it was proved that that person was in truth completely unfit for receiving the teaching. If he felt that a certain person would not realize religious truths or would realize but a few in this life, it actually came to happen so. Whatever Sri Ramakrishna would tell would happen literally. If any particular mood or a particular form of the deity appeared in his mind when he saw a certain person, when a certain person, a devotee would come to Sri Ramakrishna, immediately Ramakrishna would change, his mind would be tainted or his mind would be colored with certain particular mood or particular form of a deity appeared in the mind of Sri Ramakrishna when he saw a certain person. It was known that the said person was a sadhaka of that particular mood or worshipped that deity. So, whenever a devotee of that particular deity came to Sri Ramakrishna, automatically in Ramakrishna's mind, the picture of that or that vision of the deity would come. Then Ramakrishna would know he is the particular devotee of that deity. So he will give teachings accordingly. Suppose a mood maybe of Madhura Bhava or Veera Bhava or this Vatsalya Bhava would arise in his mind. That means the person who has come to Sri Ramakrishna is practicing spiritual practices in that mood. If any particular mood or a particular form of a deity appeared in his mind, in Ramakrishna's mind, when he saw a certain person, it was known that that such person was a sadhaka, spiritual aspirant of that particular mood, or worshipped that deity. If Sri Ramakrishna suddenly said anything to any person under the influence of an inward mood, that person got much light by it and his life became altogether changed. Innumerable incidents of this type can be cited from the life of Sri Ramakrishna. Urged by that irresistible inward devotional mode, the master, as he used to do on many other occasions, now regarded himself as a woman or mother, both in body and mind, and acted accordingly. So when he had the vision of Rama as a sweet child, when he saw Jatadhari, so that thought, that mood of Vatsalya Bhava, that is, he being the mother, he is now, Ramakrishna has become Kausalya completely. It's not just for a moment or for some time. Until that mood ended, or that he was in that mood of Vatsalya Bhava, he became totally identified with Mother Kausalya. And he started looking at that child Rama in that mood. So now when Jatadhari came, when Jatadhari came to the presence of Sri Ramakrishna in Dakshineshwar, he could see the change, transformation happening in this body. He got that complete transformation in his mind and body and personality of that woman or a mother, both in body and mind, and acted accordingly. So when he had the vision of Sri Rama as a sweet child, he assumed the attitude of maternal affection towards him, the motherly affection towards that child. He had been, no doubt, initiated in the mantra of Rama long ago in order to perform properly the worship and service of his family deity Raghuvira. So to perform the deity's worship in his house, family deity Raghuvira, he was already initiated in the Rama mantra, but he was not then attracted towards him in any mood except that of a servant towards his master. He had practiced the Dasya Bhava, thinking him as the servant like Hanuman and Ramachandra as the master. We have seen that, we have studied that. So no other mood had come any time. Now, after the arrival of Jatadhari, because he was practicing that spiritual practice of Vatsalya Bhava, now Ramakrishna's mind too was colored by that thought, and he himself became completely identified with Mother Kausalya and started treating Sri Ramachandra, baby Ramachandra, in that mode. Having the above mentioned new mode towards the deity, he now became anxious to be initiated by a guru according to the scriptures in a mantra befitting the new mode and to reach the ultimate limit of realization in that discipline. So, if you used to take up any discipline, you wanted to reach the end, where will it take me? What will be the goal reached there? Anything. You would not just read, just like the Bachelor of Philosophy or Master of Philosophy, MPhil or BA in Philosophy, then just study it, the Eastern philosophy, Western philosophy, and Indian philosophy, Confucianism, Buddhism, and then write a thesis and end there. No, take it up, practice it, make his own body as a laboratory, his own personality, mind, body, thought, everything as a laboratory. Then practice it and reach the end. So now you can see Ramakrishna's master degree, not only ordinary master degree or PhD or postdoctorate, it is reaching the end, realization in that philosophy. So MPhil or BA in philosophy or PhD in philosophy. What is meant by PhD? Expand it. It is again philosophy only. PhD. So that P there is nothing but philosophy only. So now Ramakrishna reached the end of it. Totally, the goal was reached, not there with the thesis or some thing he would end there. He would practice it and go and reach the end of it. He would never give up until then. Having the above mentioned new mode towards the deity, he now became anxious to be initiated by the Guru. According to the scriptures, totality, he would practice in totality. In a mantra befitting the new mode and to reach the ultimate limit of the realization in that discipline. Perfected in the mantra of the divine child, Jatadhari came to know the eagerness of the master and gladly initiated him in the mantra of his own chosen ideal. Now merged in the sadhana of that mantra, in the manner taught by him, the master succeeded in the course of only a few days in having the divine vision of the child Rama, constantly. So within a few days, he reached the goal. He started practicing so much of intensity, so much of concentration. Now, I've told you earlier about the real education. Swami Vivekananda had told, is it information collection? Is it fact finding, fact collection? What is education? Is it collection of information? No. Swami Vivekananda tells, it is the training by which the current of will is brought under control and made fruitful. The current of will. Now, what is meant by current? There is air current, there is water current, there is electric current. Flow of anything, flow of electron is called electric current. Flow of air is called air current. Flow of water is called water current. So whatever is flowing, that's called current. So the current and expression of will. So will also has a current flow. If our will is flowing towards the outward, the worldly things, the current is worldly. If you make it flow inwards into the character building and good nature, then it is going to in the proper direction. So that flow, that current and expression of willpower, our willpower. So controlling that and guiding that in the proper thing, that is real education. According to Swami Vivekananda, what is real education? The expression and current of will to take it under your control and then making it fruitful. That is real education. So guiding the willpower in the proper direction, and that current will be manipulated by your willpower. That your willpower will be manipulated, it will be under your control. You are the master. The senses and the mind will be not your master. They will not be catching you by the throat and pulling you wherever it wants. Paranti prasabam manaha, which Lord Krishna is telling. The Indriyas are so strong, your sense, organs and mind is so strong, they are masters of you are the slave, will catch you by the collar and take you wherever it wants. Paranti prasabam manaha, forcefully it will take us. But real education is taking control of those sense organs and the mind and making them your slaves, you be the master. That is real education. Vivekananda tells. Education is the process by which the expression, the current of will is brought under control and made fruitful. That is called education. So now you can see Ramakrishna has brought that willpower under his control. And wherever he puts it, it will give fruit immediately. It makes it fruitful. And what is the other thing which Swami Vivekananda has told about education? If I am given another opportunity to get educated, I will not go for collection of facts, but I will go for concentration of the mind, focusing, concentration of the mind. Then the concentrated mind will become like a light, torchlight, like a laser beam, like a torchlight. So you take a torchlight and put wherever you want, the dark places, then it will reveal the truth. Likewise, the mind, when it is concentrated, it acts like a torchlight or a laser beam. You apply that concentrated mind to anything, and that will reveal the secret. So you have to do so much of hard work the scientists have to do to get some result. Once if you focus and make your mind concentrated, put that to anything, it will reveal the secret. So that is the secret of education, concentration of the mind. So Ramakrishna has concentrated his mind so perfectly, and the willpower is brought under control. Everything is in his control. Apply it on something, within 3 days or 3 minutes, it is yours. That's why it will take for us to take up one attitude, and the whole life is enough. Maybe we have to realize that we have to take maybe 10 life or 20 life. But for Sri Ramakrishna, everything is coming to his control within 3 days or few days. Why? Perfect concentration, perfect focus. Wherever he applies, the secret is revealed. Now you can see, he took the mantra by Jatadhari. Jatadhari came to know the eagerness of the master and gladly initiated him in the mantra of his own chosen ideal, merged in the sadhana of that mantra in the manner taught by Jatadhari. No this thing at all, no doubts. Once the Guru tells, completely accordingly, you'll go to the details and perform it and get the result. We'll have so much of doubts in our mind. Is it right? Is it wrong? What has been told is correct or not? So all doubts will rise. So you will not have focus. Ramakrishna's mind is so perfect. No doubt, faith, intense concentration. Follow literally whatever has been told. Go to the complete extreme extent to follow it. Then the result is yours. So Jatadhari came to know the eagerness of Master and gladly initiated him in the mantra of his chosen ideal, that is Bala Ramachandra, baby Ramachandra, Ramalalla, merged in that sadhana of that mantra in the manner taught by him. That's why Sri Ramakrishna used to always tell to his disciples, he used to sing that song, Dub, 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 rup shagore, dub amar mon. Dive deep, oh mind, dive deep, go deeper into the aspect. Don't be floating on the surface of the water. You will not get the pearls, the costly precious stones. They are lying under the sea, Ratnakara. So you have to dive deep, go deep. You will find all those beautiful precious stones, the pearls inside the sea. It's called Ratnakara. Ratna means precious stones. So you have in your own heart the Hridi Brindaban. Lord, that Brindaban, Krishna's Leela Sthan is in your own heart, Hridi Brindaban. Dive deep, dive deep. There are so many precious stones hidden there in your heart, own heart. Just to tell, dive deep, dive deep. What is diving deep? That is intense concentration. So what is that? You can see absorbing in that mode. That is diving deep. Master succeeded by that intense concentration, Lord, the Master Ramakrishna succeeded in the course of only a few days in having the divine vision of the child Rama constantly, which took the whole life for Jatadhari, his own guru. For Ramakrishna now, it was a trice within few days. So diving deep, what is diving deep? Absorbed in the meditation of the divine form. In the mode of maternal affection towards him, he soon came to the realization, that is, what is the realization? Rama, who is the son of Dasharatha, is in every being. The same Rama is immanent in the universe and yet transcending it. That is to say, Rama is not only Dasharatha's son, but also exists as the Jiva in each body. That is the realization is got. Tulsidas couplet is there. Jo Ram Dasharatha ka beta, Jo Ram Dasharatha ka beta. So, wo hi sab Jiva Atma mein leta. So he is the one who is sleeping in all the living beings. These are the words, couplet of Tulsidas. So now Ramakrishna realized it. That you have heard that song, Gungataka Patakolu Re, Ghatagata Ramata Rama Ramaya. So Ghatagata Ramata, in all the pots, that is in all the living beings are considered, the body is considered to be the pot. Ghatagata Ramata, the Lord Ramachandra is present. Ramata is lying in all the living beings. Ghatagata Ramata Rama Ramaya, Kataku Vachana Matu Bol. Do not tell harsh word to any people, because it is the same Ramachandra who is there in all the living beings. So the same thing Ramakrishna is having, that highest realization, the end. After that sadhana, whatever now Ramakrishna, after doing the sadhana of this baby Ramachandra, taking that in that maternal affection, what was the result he gained? Now absorbed in the meditation of the divine form, in the mode of maternal affection towards Ramachandra, baby Ramachandra, Sri Ramakrishna soon came to the realization. What was the end? Rama, Lord Ramachandra, who is the son of Dasharatha, is in every being. Jo Rama Dasharatha ka beta, sab jivo mein leta, is the one who is sleeping in every living being. So Rama, who is the son of Dasharatha, is in every being. The same Ramachandra, Rama, is immanent in the universe. Is not only in every living being, but also is immanent, all pervading. And yet he transcends it. And what is that? Parabrahma Swarupa, Nirakara Nirguna Parabrahma Swarupa. That's what Krishna is telling in Bhagavad Gita too. Sarvavyapi. That 7 aspects of the nature of the Atman. It is told, Lord Krishna is telling in that. We get all those things in that verse. Najayate, mriyate, va kadachit, nayam bhutva, bhavita, vana bhuyaha, ajo nityaha, shashvatoyam, prano nahanyate, hanyamane, sharire. So in that verse, while explaining that yesterday, I went through that again, repeating that revision, doing the revision of what is the nature of your soul. So it is all pervading, sarvagataha. So what is your real nature? The Atman's real nature, Lord Krishna is told. I recapitulated, I revised that there, giving back what Lord Krishna is told in the 2nd chapter, the Gnana Yoga or Sankhya Yoga. What was that? Atman, or that Parabrahma, that is your real nature, is Nityaha, eternal, Satyaha, reality, Sarvagataha, it is all pervading. That is what here Ramakrishna is having the same thing, experience here. What is that? All pervading? Sarvagataha. All pervading. Sarvagataha means all pervading. So what is told in the words of Sri Shardanandaji and Ramakrishna himself, the same, in different words, the same thing is told. What is that? merged in the sadhana of that mantra in the manner taught by him, the master succeeded by the course of only a few days in having the divine vision of the child Rama constantly. And what was the end result? Absorbed in the meditation of the divine form, in the mode of maternal affection towards him, he soon came to that realization. What is that? Rama, Lord Ramachandra, who is the son of Dasharatha, he is in every being. Antaryami, Sarvantaryami, is in every being as the Atman, in you, in me, in everybody. The same Atman, Rama. The same Rama is immanent, Sarvagataha, Sarvavyapi. That's what Lord Krishna is telling there, Sarvagataha. Then immanent in the universe, and yet he transcends, he's beyond that. Akarta, Abhokta, he transcends it, he's the Parabrahman. He's not only immanent in this created universe, he's not only living in every living being, he transcends that, he's the Parabrahman. So he got the vision. So that is called raga, attachment. Love with selfishness is called attachment, raga. Real love is always sacrificing. Real love is always unselfish. So when you love somebody, then you will be always conscious of the happiness of the other person. You are not bothered about your happiness. So real love is in the happiness of others. So that is true love. So now the person who loves another person, truly loves, will be always thinking that the person whom he loves should be happy. So this Jatadhari was truly loving that baby Ramachandra, that Ramalala. When that baby expressed that I will not henceforward come with you, I will stay with Sri Ramakrishna, he happily agreed. Why? He was always thinking of the happiness of the baby Rama. If you are happy with Sri Ramakrishna, that I will be the most happiest. My intention of keeping with me was that I should make you happy. That is Shuddha Bhakti, pure devotion. What shall I do to the Lord? How shall I serve the Lord? How can I make my Lord happy? Priyatam Pundarikakshaha, Sarva Yagneshwaro Harihi. We tell that, utter that Priyatam Pundarikakshaha. Priyatam means we have to please the Lord. How can I please that baby Rama? Now, baby Rama is now feeling that he wants to stay with Ramakrishna, he will be more happy. Then, what am I to do? When I am devoted to that baby Ramachandra, am I possessive? Telling that, no, you have to come back with me? No. Your happiness is my happiness. The Lord's happiness, the baby Ramachandra's happiness, that is true love. Your happiness is my happiness. You are happy with Sri Ramakrishna? Please stay. I will sacrifice. I may be unhappy. Never mind. I will be unhappy. You be happy. That is true love. And now you can see Jatadhari, before he went away, made a gift to the master of the image of Ramalala, which he had served so long with a single-minded devotion. He was ready to give it up, ready to sacrifice. Why? Because he wants to make his Ishtadevata, baby Rama, happy. That is true devotion, highest devotion. That is Shuddha Bhakti, pure devotion. At the lower end, I should be made happy. My happiness is important. My selfishness is important. Possessiveness, possessing. That is attachment raga. When it matures, when you know the true, what is true love, then you will be always feeling for other person whom you love. Many times I've given the example of my pre-monastic mother. When I went to take permission from her, going down at her feet, I fell at her feet. I did pronounce to her, touched her feet and told, Mother, I need your blessings. I want to become a monk. I want to join the Ramakrishna order. What was her reply? She told, "My dear child, I'm not bothered whether you will live with me in the family or you will go and stay in the monastery. I'm not bothered whether you become a monk or a householder. So, what I want is that you should be happy wherever you are. So I bless you from my heart. Wherever you are, please be happy. You should be happy. That's my blessing. That is what I want." So, the love of mother towards the child got expressed. True love. She was not possessive. She didn't tell, "No, you should not go. You should be always staying with me." What was her wish? What was her blessings? She told, "Wherever you are, be happy." So, her love expressed in the happiness of the child. So, that is true love. So, here, Jatadhari is happy to give up that child Rama because the child Rama is happy to stay with Sri Ramakrishna. So, we shall further go and see what happened. Or that living image expressed his desire to Jatadhari that he would henceforward live with Sri Ramakrishna. We have described elsewhere in detail the extraordinary Leela of that image, the consequent presence of the struggle against adverse impressions of the past. Sorry, skipped one page by mistake. In detail, the extraordinary Leela of the image with the master and Jatadhari, that is told in another place. Therefore, it is unnecessary to deal with the topic here. When the master applied his mind in the aforesaid manner to performing his Vatsalya, Bhava, devotion, and experience its ultimate result, the Bhairavi Brahmani was staying at Dakshineshwar at that time. We were told by the master himself that she was a highly experienced in the discipline of Panchabhavas, all the five attitudes in the devotion, that is especially Vaishnava, spoken of in the Vaishnava books, as she was in those of the Tantras too. She was experienced in both all the Tantra and the Vaishnava. Did the master receive any particular help from her while practicing the Vatsalya and Madhura Bhavas? We have not clearly heard anything about it from Ramakrishna. But we were told by the master and Hriday that established in the mode of maternal affection towards God, the Brahmani, the Bhairavi Brahmani, treated the master, that is Sri Ramakrishna, as Gopala, Bala Gopala. She used to feel that she was the mother, Yashoda or Devaki, and treat Ramakrishna as Bala Gopala, baby child Krishna, the child Krishna. Therefore, it is inferred. So we can imagine, we can infer. What is that? That the master got at least some help from Bhairavi Brahmani also in doing the Vatsalya Bhava, both at the time when he assumed the mode of maternal affection towards the child Rama and had the ultimate experience in that mode, and when he practiced Madhura Bhava, the sweet mood in which he adopted the attitude of a woman towards a lover. One might doubt whether he actually got any particular help from her, but this much is admitted without doubt that a strong desire to practice the disciplines of those moods arose in his mind when he saw the Brahmani engaged in them and heard her eulogize them. So Ramakrishna also got help in the Madhura Bhava and also the Vatsalya Bhava practice by Bhairavi Brahmani too. So now we have completed the study of the Vatsalya Bhava of Sri Ramakrishna. Some more things. How did he stay? How did he treat that baby Rama as Mother Kausalya? How he used to talk with them? All those things is given in another place. That's what Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling. So now he has not given the details. Now we are going, because it is concentrating on the spiritual aspirant's life. So that's why we are only giving the spiritual practice and the spiritual aspirant's life and the sadhana. So the Leela, what happened there, how did he behave with that baby Rama and other things is given in another place. So now we are moving to another bhava, the attitude by which he realized God. We have finished the Vatsalya Bhava. What is the next Bhava? The next chapter is the essence of the Madhura Bhava. Now Ramakrishna will take up another practice, another attitude in the Vaishnavism, that is Madhura Bhava, sweet mood. And what is that? I have explained it earlier, that assuming the attitude, the mood of myself or ourself being a woman or a wife, and the Lord being the husband. The Lord will be considered as the husband, and the aspirant will consider himself as the woman or the wife. Though a male or a female, you can consider, because all of us are Prakriti. It is mixed in us. Many times we have taken, maybe in our last birth or the other last birth, we might be woman. Many times the female body would be there, because we're thinking more of man. In the next life, we will become man. And again, if we think more of woman in this life, we will become woman. So it will be interchanging. So we had so many times assumed the body of woman too. So in every man, there is a woman. In every woman, there is a man. Then who is that Purusha? What is the Purusha? Pure Sheti iti Purushaha. The real Purusha is the one who is present in our heart. Pure, this town, this city. Shete, who lives. The Atman, the Paramatman is the real Purusha, Purusha Uttama. But we are all, though we may have a mustache or a beard and other things, we may call ourselves man, but in reality we are Prakriti, nature. Until we realize the Purusha who is within us, everybody is a Prakriti only. So everybody can practice that. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a man who practiced that. And many of the Vaishnava followers in Gaudiya Sampradaya, the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they also practiced that. Madhura Bhava. So Meera practiced that Madhura Bhava. Then, as I told you, one saint in Karnataka, Akka Mahadevi. Her name was Mahadevi. Akka means sister. She also practiced Madhura Bhava to Lord Shiva. She herself assumed that she is the wife of Lord Shiva, and she used to practice that towards Lord Shiva. Akka Mahadevi. That many examples can be seen. Even men having that attitude. They also tell that King Solomon also had that attitude towards God. It's written in the poetry, only those people in the Semitic religion couldn't understand it. Madhura Bhava. So now we are going to the essence of the Madhura Bhava, sweet mood. So Madhura means sweet. It is well nigh impossible for one who is not a sadhaka to enter into the spirit of the actions and experience until you yourself become a spiritual aspirant. You cannot understand what is the mind and mood of that particular aspirant. It is well nigh impossible for one who is not a sadhaka, a spiritual aspirant, to enter into the spirit of the actions and experiences of the sadhaka and arrive at a proper understanding of the same. For it is a matter of spirit outside the field of gross and deluding sense objects. So there, the time sequence, which has reference to events and objects of sense life, cease to have any significance in this plane, because we have experience only in the worldly plane. At the plane of the spirit, that doesn't hold good. So we will not understand that. Thus, the frantic efforts of the competitive life. What is our competition? To earn more money, to earn more luxury, to earn more power. That is this competitive world. So thus the frantic effort of the competitive life, which are born of man's lower nature, animal tendency, instinctive nature, but wrongly interpreted as greatness and heroism by worldly people, have no relevance. You can see on the ordinary people, the people will enjoy the strength of a lion killing 1,000 lambs, not knowing what is the pain of the death to the lambs. You can see the gladiators, the Greek and the other things, even now boxing and so many fighting. So they are at the level of the physical world only. They find joy in it. Now that physical joy is only their joy, physical strength is only their known strength. So they enjoy the lion killing 1,000 lambs. So thus the frantic effort of the competitive life, which are born of man's lower nature, but wrongly interpreted as greatness and heroism by worldly people, have no relevance at all in this plane of spirit. The only significant entities there are the aspirant's mind and the endless currents of impressions stored up in it from experiences of the past lives. Impressions, it's called impressions, means samskara, the past impressions. We go on doing so many things and becomes habit. Repeated actions will form habits, and repeated habits will form impressions. They are called the impressions in our mind is called samskara. And those memory which will be there, you have enjoyed so many sense objects in your mind. You have done it with your tongue, nose, eyes, and everything, skin, but that experience or that memory will be there in your mind. That is called vasana. So you should know all these terminologies. Vasana and impression is samskara. Habit, repeated habit, it has become samskara. So habits, all those things are there in our mind. So the only significant entities in this field, in the field of spirit or the spiritual life, are the aspirant's mind and the endless currents of impression, that is samskara, stored up in it from experiences of the past lives, attraction for high ideals, and an ultimate goal born of dissatisfaction generated by the conflicts of external life. You have been beaten black and blue in this worldly life. We are in this competitive world trying to get so many things. All are trying to get the same thing. So there will be a fight, anger, jealousy, greed, everything. So we fight with each other. So we will get nice beatings from this world, nature. So we get dissatisfied. So much of pain and pain and pain everywhere. So much of suffering, so much of loss. So that will give you dissatisfaction, that experience. So ultimate goal born of dissatisfaction. Why do you want to give up all these things? Why do you get vairagya? Because you want to get higher things. So goal born of dissatisfaction generated by the conflicts of external life is the guiding factor in this spiritual life. These are the only things you have: your mind, your impressions, the goal to reach God, and the dissatisfaction from this world, worldly experience. There is also the consequent presence of the struggle against adverse impressions of the past. Struggle which derive an added power from these very efforts of theirs to overcome them. Next, the life of a sadhaka is characterized by a resolute attempt to continually diving deeper and deeper into one's own personality by turning the mind inwards and away from the senses. These are the things which are there in the mind of a or a life of a spiritual aspirant. Mining, as it were, into the deeper and deeper strata of the inner world, the sadhaka experiences subtler and subtler realms of ideas until at last he strikes the ground of his existence and remains one with it. The immutable means changeless, it doesn't change. The immutable reality without a second, which is devoid of sound, touch, and form, and from which all ideas, including his eye sense, spring and how they are being. This is the experience of samadhi. If the subtle impressions of the mind have not been completely eradicated, a trace of ignorance is still left. And consequently, the sadhaka comes down from samadhi to experience the external world again by reversing the process through which it attained the immediate knowledge of the non-dual reality. Thus, does the mind of the aspirant continue to descend from the superconscious to the normal consciousness and again ascend from it to the superconscious over and over again. So, what is happening in the mind of a spiritual aspirant has been so nicely explained by Shardanandaji Maharaj. That's why we are going through the life of Sri Ramakrishna as a spiritual aspirant, so that we can understand what is spiritual practice, what is the goal, and what happens behind the scene in the mind of the spiritual aspirant and the personality. What are the changes happening, and what is the end? How to come back from that? Everything is so nicely explained scientifically. So we will make further study of it tomorrow because we have already completed our time. It's already nearing 8 o'clock. So we will stop our discussion. So we will give now time for question and answer session. If you have any doubts, now you can ask doubts or you can ask questions. If you have any doubts, if you have any questions, you can now entertain it. Today is Sunday. You have leisure time. You can ask your questions and doubts in leisure. I'll try to answer it.
Maharaj?
Yes, Madhusudan.
Yeah. So hearing today's satsang, there is sort of a feeling there was no difference between us and Thakur, because he was also a human.
Pardon, I couldn't catch the last part of your question. Please be allowed. I'll just increase the sound a little volume. Yeah. Now please tell.
Okay. So hearing today's satsang, Maharaj.
Yeah.
So there was sort of a feeling inside. There was no difference between us and Thakur. He was also like us, but had extraordinary abilities.
Yeah, that's true. That's why he has come to show the same Atman which is in him is in you too. You have all that capacities. So you can also become like him. That is what the Lord has taken the human form to show that you are so great. You are like him. He wants to show that. Don't be satisfied with this worldly achievement. You have something higher in you. You are just like me. That is what to show that Avatara Purusha has come. There's no difference between a Jiva and Ishvara. The only difference in Brahma Sutra, Vyasa Maharshi, he does that only. You cannot become the ruler of this universe. That's all. You can merge with the ruler Ishvara. You cannot become the Ishvara, but you can become the Parabrahma, even greater than that.
The moment we say he's an incarnate, he's God incarnate, so we think it's something different than what we are. But again,
he wants to come. He has come to show that you are one with him, to lift you up. We are separating. We are thinking he's separate. We are separate. So to show that we are one and the same, he has come down to help us to live to his level. Otherwise, what on earth should he take so much of pain and to come down to our level? Taking all the weaknesses and suffering, diseases and everything, so much of hardship he has to undergo. He has to take the sins of all the people and do all the work here, only to show that you are one with that Lord. You can rise high.
Okay, Maharaj. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Any other doubts? I think there are no questions. So shall I conclude with a prayer? So the prayer also tells that Priyatam Pundarikakshaha. So that is the highest Shuddha Bhakti, Priyatam. We have to please the Lord. Pundarikaksha. Pundarikam is lotus eyed. Aksha. Pundarikakshaha. Sarva Yagneshwaro Harihi, the Lord. He is the master of everything. Tasmin tushte, if he is pleased, Jagat tushtam, the whole universe is pleased. Prinite prinitam Jagat. So try to please the Lord always. That is highest bhakti. Always we should have in my mind, how can I please the Lord? How can I, every action, how shall I offer everything? How shall I please the Lord? How can I serve all the living beings? So that should be the attitude. That is what we are always chanting that in the end. So that is the meaning of this prayer. Om Priyatam Pundari Kakshah Sarvayagneshwaro Hari Tasmin Tushte Prinite Prinitam Jagat Harihi Om Shri Rama Krishna Arpanamastu.